Hey, good evening, everybody. I welcome you back to One Book, One School. My name is Mr. Farr. I'm a fifth grade teacher at Metalon, and tonight I'll be reading chapters 4 through 7 of Mr. Lemoncello's library. This is a first for me, too, so if you're reading this for the first time, then we're in the same place. By popular request of the kids at school, they asked if I could do the reading from a fish tank, so at least I could do. Bear with me, my face is a little warm today from all the sun and wind outside, shoveling on our snow day. I hope you guys had a great snow day too. Let's get started. Chapter 4. So exactly what kind of games are we talking about? I don't know, said Akimi. Fun book stuff, I guess. And do you think this new library will have equally new computers? Definitely. Wi-Fi? Probably. Kyle nodded slowly. And this all takes place Friday, right? Yep. Akimi, I think you just discovered a way for me to shorten my most recent groundation. Your what? My game-deprived parental punishment. Kyle figured being locked in the library with computers on Friday night would be better than being stuck at home without any gaming gear at all. Can I borrow a pen and a sheet of paper? What? You're going to write your essay now on the bus? Better late than never. They're due in homeroom, Kyle, first thing. Fine, I'll keep it brief. Akimi shook her head and handed Kyle a notebook and a pen. The bus bounced over a speed bump into the school driveway. He would need to make his essay really, really short. He was hoping the 12 winners would be randomly pulled out of a hat or something, and, like the lottery people always said in their TV commercials, you just had to be in it to win it. Meanwhile, in another part of town, Charles Chiltington was sitting in his father's library working with a college student who'd been hired to help him polish up his extra credit essay. He was dressed in his typical school uniform, khaki slacks, blue blazer, button-down shirt, and tastefully striped tie. He was the only student at Alexandriaville Middle School who dressed this way. What's a big word for library? Charles asked his tutor. Teachers love big words. Book repository, bigger, please. Athenaeum. Perfect. It's such a weird word, they'll have to look it up. Charles made the change, saved the file, and sent the document off to the printer. Your dad sure reads a lot, said his ELA tutor, admiring the leather-bound books lining the walls of Mr. Chiltington's home library. Knowledge is power, said Charles. It's one of our fundamental family philosophies. Another was, we eat losers for breakfast. Kyle and Akimi climbed off the bus and headed into the school. You know, said Akimi, my dad told me the library people had like a bazillion different architects doing drawings and blueprints that they couldn't share with each other. How come? To keep everything super secret. My dad and his firm did the front door, and that was it. The second that they stepped into Mr. Cameron's classroom for homeroom period, Miguel Fernandez shouted, Hey, Kyle, check it out, bro. He held up a clear plastic binder, maybe 2 inches thick. I totally aced my essay, man. The library dealio? Yeah, I put the pictures and charts plus a whole section about the ancient library of Alexandria, Egypt, since this is the Alexandriaville, Ohio. Cool, said Kyle. Miguel Fernandez was super enthusiastic about everything. He was also the president of the school's Library Aid Society. Hey, Kyle, you know what they say about libraries? Not really. They have something for every chapter of your life. Get it? Chapter of your life. While Kyle groaned, the second bell rang. All right, everybody, said Mrs. Dana Cameron, Kyle's homeroom teacher. Time to turn in your extra credit essays. She started walking up and down the rows of desks. The judges will be meeting in the faculty lounge this morning to make the preliminary cut. Crap, thought Kyle. There were judges. This was not going to be a bingo ball drawing like the lottery. Mr. Keeley, the teacher, hovered over his desk. Did you write an essay? Yeah, sort of. I'm sorry, I don't understand. Either you wrote an essay or you didn't. Kyle half-heartedly handed her his hastily scribed sheet of paper. And unfortunately, Mrs. Cameron read it out loud. Balloons. There might be balloons. I think that was a clue that we had last week, wasn't it, guys? The classroom erupted with laughter until Mrs. Cameron did that tilt her glasses down and glare over them thing that she did to terrify everybody into total silence. This is your essay, Kyle? Yes, ma'am. We were supposed to write an essay while we were excited about the grand opening, and, well, balloons are always my favorite part. I see, said Mrs. Cameron. You know, Kyle, your brother Curtis wrote excellent essays when he was in my class. Yes, Mrs. Cameron, mumbled Kyle. Mrs. Cameron sighed contentedly. Please give him my regards. Yes, ma'am. Mrs. Cameron moved on to the next desk. Miguel eagerly handed her his thick booklet. Very well done, Miguel. Thank you, Mrs. Cameron. Kyle heard an odd noise out in the parking lot, a puttering, clunking, clanking sound. Oh my, said Mrs. Cameron. I wonder if that's him. She hurried to the window and pulled up the blinds. All of the kids in the classroom followed her. And then they saw it. Out in the visitor parking lot, a car that looked like a giant red boot on wheels. It had a strip of notched black boot sole for its bumper. Thick shoelaces crisscrossed their way up the windshield and to the top of the 10-foot-tall boot collar. It looked just like the red boot from that game, said Miguel. Family Frenzy. Kyle nodded. Family Frenzy was Mr. Lemoncello's first and probably most famous game. The red boot was one of the 10 tokens that you could pick to move around the board. A tall, gangly man stepped out of the boot car. It's Mr. Lemoncello, gasped Kyle, his heart racing. What's he doing here? It was just announced, said Mrs. Cameron. This evening, Mr. Luigi Lemoncello himself will be the final judge. Of what? Your library essays. Ooh. Sounds exciting. Chapter 5. Eating lunch in the cafeteria, Kyle stared at his wilted fish sticks, wishing he could pull a magic take another turn card out of thin air. Raise your hand if you've been there. Me too. I blew it, he mumbled. Yep, Akimi agreed, you basically did. Can you imagine how awesome that new library is going to be if Mr. Lemoncello and his imaginary factory guys have anything to do with it? Yeah, I can, and I'm kind of hoping I get to see it too. After all, I wrote a real essay, not one sentence about balloons. Thanks, rub it in. Akimi eased up a little bit. Hey, Kyle, when you're playing a game like Sorry and you get bumped back 3 spaces, do you usually quit? No, if I get bumped, I play harder because I know I need to find a way back to those 3 spaces and pull ahead of the pack. Hey guys, Miguel Fernandez carried his tray over to join Kyle and Akimi. He was being followed by a kid with spiky hair and glasses the size of welder's goggles. You two know Andrew Peckelman, right? Hey, said Kyle and Akimi. Hello. Andrew was one of my top library aides, said Miguel. Cool, said Akimi. Mrs. Youngins, the librarian, just confirmed that Mr. Lemoncello is the top secret benefactor who donated all the money to build the new public library. $500 million. She heard it on NPR, added Peckelman, who more or less talked through his nose. So we did some primary source research on Mr. Lemoncello and his connection to Alexandriaville. What'd you find out? Asked Kyle. Well, first off, said Miguel, he was born here. He had 9 brothers and sisters, added Andrew, all of them crammed into a tiny apartment with only 1 bathroom over in Little Italy. And said Miguel, sorry. And, said Peckelman, sounding like he wanted to one-up Miguel, he loves the old public library down on Market Street. He used to go there when he was a kid and needed a quiet place to think and doodle his ideas. And get this, said Miguel eagerly, Mrs. Tobin, the librarian back then, took an interest in little Luigi, even though he was just, a kid like us. She kept the library open late some nights to let him borrow junk from her desk or her purse, thimbles and thumbtacks and glue bottles, even red Barbie doll boots. Stuff that he used for game pieces so that he could map out his first ideas of a library table. Then, Andrew jumped in, then Mrs. Tobin took Mr. Lemoncello's sketch for Family Frenzy home to her husband, who ran a print shop. They signed some papers, created a company, and within a couple of years, they were all millionaires. But Miguel had the last word, and now, of course, Mr. Lemoncello is a bazillionaire. What are you 4 nerds so excited about, said Haley Daly, as she waltzed past with the gaggle of popular girls in her royal court. Haley was the princess of the 7th grade, blonde hair, blue eyes, blazingly bright smile. She looked like a walking toothpaste commercial. We're pumped about Mr. Lemoncello, said Miguel, and the new library, said Andrew. And, said Kyle melodramatically, just seeing you, Haley. You are so immature. Come on, girls. Haley and her friends flounced away to the cool kid table. Check it out, said Akimi, gesturing toward the cafeteria food line where Charles Chitlington was balancing 2 trays, his own and one for Mrs. Cameron. I'm so glad that you have lunchroom duty today, Mrs. Cameron, Kyle heard Chitlington say. If you don't mind, I have a few questions about how conventions within genres, such as poetry, drama, or essays, can affect meaning. Well, Charles, I'd be happy to discuss that with you. Well, thank you, Mrs. Cameron, and may I say, that sweater certainly complements your eye color. What a suck-up, mumbled Akimi. Chitlington's trying to use his Weasley charm to make sure Mrs. C sends his essay up the line to Mr. Lemoncello. Don't worry, said Kyle. Mrs. Cameron isn't the final judge. Mr. Lemoncello is. And since he's a genius and will definitely pick the essays you guys all wrote. Undoubtedly, said Peckleman. Thanks, Kyle, said Miguel. I just wish that you could win with us, said Akimi. Well, maybe I can. Like you said, this is just a move back 3 spaces card. A take a walk on the boardwalk when someone else owns it. It's a shoot in the chutes and ladders, a detour to the molasses swamp in Candyland. Yo, Kyle, said Miguel, exactly how many board games have you played? Enough to know that you don't ever quit until somebody else actually wins. He picked up his lunch and headed for the dirty tray window. Akimi called after him, Where are you going? I have the rest of the lunch and all of study hall to work on a new essay, but Mrs. Cameron won't take it. Nah, maybe, but I've got to roll the dice one more time. Maybe I'll get lucky. I hope so, said Akimi. Me too. See you guys on the bus. Bye, Jackson. Chapter 6. Working on his library essay like he'd never worked on any essay in his whole essay writing life, Kyle crafted a killer thesis sentence that compared libraries to his favorite games. Using a library can make learning about anything and everything fun, he wrote. When you're in a library researching a topic, you're on a scavenger hunt, looking for clues and prizes in books instead of your attic or backyard. He put in points and subpoints. He wrapped everything up with a tidy conclusion. He even checked his spelling twice. But Akimi had been right. I'm sorry, Kyle, Mrs. Cameron said when he handed her his new paper at the end of the day. This is very good, and I am impressed with your extra effort. However, the deadline was this morning, and rules are rules, the same as they are in the board games you mentioned in your essay. She basically handed Kyle a go back 500 spaces card, but Kyle refused to give up. He remembered how his mother had written to Mr. Lemoncello's Imagination Factory when he and his brother needed a fresh set of clues for the indoor-outdoor scavenger hunt. Maybe he could send his essay directly to Mr. Lemoncello via email. Maybe if the game maker wasn't judging the essays until later that night, Kyle still had a shot. A long shot, but hey, sometimes the long ones were the only shots you got. And the second he hit home, he sat down at his mother's kitchen computer. He attached his essay file to a high-priority email addressed to Mr. Lemoncello in the Imagination Factory. What are you doing, Kyle? His mom asked when she came into the room and found him typing on her computer. Some extra credit homework. Extra credit. School's out at the end of the week. So? Well, you're not playing my Diner Dash game, are you? No, Mom, it's an essay about Mr. Lemoncello's amazing new library downtown. Well, that sounds interesting. I heard on the radio that there's going to be a gala grand opening reception this Friday night at the Parker House Hotel right across the street from the old bank building. I mean, the new library. Kyle typed in a PS to his email. I hope at the party on Friday you will have balloons. He hit send. Who did you send your essay to? His mother asked. Your teacher? Nope, Mr. Lemoncello himself. It took some digging, but I had found his email address on his game company's website. Really? I'm impressed. His mom rubbed his hair. You know, this morning I said to your dad, Kyle can be just as smart as Curtis is if he just just as focused as Mike when he puts his mind to it. Kyle smiled. Thanks, Mom. But his smile quickly disappeared when a bong alerted him to an incoming email from Mr. Lemoncello. It was an auto-response form letter. Dear Lemoncello game lover, this is a no-reply mailbox. Your message did not go through. Please do not try to resend it or you'll just hear another bong. But thank you for playing our games. And Chapter 7. Heading back to school on Tuesday, Kyle knew that he had to put on a brave face. He smiled as he walked with his class toward the auditorium for a special early morning assembly, the one where Mr. Luigi L. Lemoncello himself would announce the winners of the library lock-in essay contest. "I hope he picks yours," Kyle whispered to Akimi. "Thanks, I do too. But the lock-in won't be as much fun without you." "Well, when it's over and the library is officially open, you can take me on a tour." "That's exactly what I'm going to do, if I win. If you don't win, I'm sending a flaming squirrel after Mrs. Cameron." For this assembly, the seventh graders, most of whom were 12 years old, were told to sit in the front rows, close to the stage. That made Kyle feel a little better. At least he'd get a chance to see Mr. Lemoncello up close and personal. But his hero wasn't even on stage, just the principal, the school librarian, Mrs. Euganis, and a red-headed woman in high-heeled shoes who Kyle didn't recognize. She sat up straight, like someone who had slipped a yardstick down the back of her bright red business suit. Her glasses were bright red, too. "That's Dr. Yanina Zinchenko," gushed Miguel Fernandez, who was sitting on Kyle's right. "Who's she?" asked Akimi, seated to Kyle's left. "Just the most famous librarian in the whole wide world." "All right, boys and girls," said the principal at the podium. "Settle down. Quiet, please. It is my great honor to introduce the head librarian for the new Alexandriaville Public Library, Dr. Yanina Zinchenko." Everybody clapped. The tall lady in the red outfit strode to the microphone. "Good morning." Her voice was breathy, with just a hint of a Russian accent. 12 years ago, this town lost its one and only public library when it was torn down to make room for an elevated parking garage. Back then, many said the internet had rendered the old-fashioned library obsolete, and that a new parking garage would attract shoppers to the boutiques and dress shops near the old bank building. But the library's demolition also meant that those of you who are now 12 years old have lived your entire lives without a public library. She looked down at the front rows. "This is why, to kick off our summer reading program, 12-year-olds will be selected to be the very first to explore the wonders awaiting inside Mr. Lemoncello's extraordinary new library. You will, of course, need your parents' permission. We have slips for you to take home. You will need a sleeping bag, a toothbrush, and, if you please, a change of clothes." She smiled mysteriously. "You might consider packing 2 pairs of underwear." "You." "Okay," thought Kyle, "that's bizarre. Did the librarian really think 7th graders weren't toilet trained?" "There will be movies, food, fun, games, and prizes. Also, each of our 12 winners will receive a $500 gift card, good toward the purchase of Lemoncello games and gizmos." "Oh man, $500 worth of free games and gear?" Kyle sank a little lower in his seat. The next time someone gave him an extra credit essay assignment, he would turn it in early. And now, here to announce our winners, the man behind the new library, the master gamester himself, Mr. Luigi Lemoncello. Dr. Zinchenko gestured to her left. The whole auditorium swung their heads. People were clapping and whistling and cheering, but nobody came on stage. The applause petered out. And then, on the opposite side of the stage, Kyle heard a very peculiar sound. It was a cross between a burp and the squeak from a squeeze toy. All right, guys, and that's where you're going to hear from our next reader in Chapter 8. I'm going to turn off my video and keep going because I really want to know what happens next. I hope you do too. I hope you're sitting down and enjoying this book with your family. I know that that's our goal for you at Medalon, is just really to encourage and facilitate time as a family to sit down and read and just enjoy time with each other with a good book like this one. So now before Godzilla back here gets too hungry and wants fed and eats somebody else, I better go feed him. Have a great night. Take care, everybody.